I'm Dr. Eva Ritvo. I'm a psychiatrist. My practice is on the beach. I have so many things to say, I don't even know where to start. But I am going to start with telling you that I have spoken in 7 countries, and I have never, ever been more excited than to present today, because this is a World Betterment Symposium. And I don't think there's ever been a better time to have a World Betterment Symposium. So it's really an honor and a privilege to be here. It's also an honor and a privilege to be here because of our host. Robert Zuckerman, as you probably know, but maybe not all of our listeners know, is an extraordinary human being. And if we want to be better, all we need to do is look over at Robert and emulate him and try to be like him. Robert came into my life only about a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Completely has changed my life and my daughter's life. So how did that happen? I'm here to talk to you about 2 projects. One is called the Bold Beauty Project, and the other is Be Kinder, and Robert is an intimate part of both of those. So Robert and I met because my co-founder, who was unable to speak to you today, well, actually she's the founder, I'm the co-founder. Her name is Shelley Bear. And Shelley is a woman who has arthritis. She got arthritis when she was 3. So because she's had arthritis since she was so young, it's really hampered her growth and development. So Shelley is about this tall, right? Yeah. And her arms are short and her fingers are short. And she has become one of the most powerful women that I know. She's probably not here today because she's being honored somewhere else, right? That's usually where she is, or working. I know we have a meeting at 11. She has decided that she needs to make the world a better place, and she tries so hard to make the world a better place. One of the things she's done to make the world a better place is she launched a project 10 years ago called Raw Beauty. And what they did in that project was they took women with different disabilities, paired them with photographers, and created an art exhibit. I don't know if anybody remembers it from 10 years ago, but it was here at the Dorchester. And the concept of that show was that they would impact everybody involved. First, and most important probably to Shelley, is her passion to help people with disabilities. So they take women and give them an opportunity to be seen in a very beautiful way. The project, by the way, from 10 years ago, disbanded, and then Shelley and I met on what I call a blind friend date about 5 years ago, and we became very good friends, and she decided she wanted to resurrect this project. So she came to me, and I was very drawn to the project for 2 reasons. Number one, I'm a psychiatrist, so I think a lot about mental health. I'm divorced from a cosmetic dermatologist, so I've had the chance to think a lot about beauty and what's the meaning of beauty. I have a book that came out in 2008 called The Beauty Prescription, the complete formula for looking and feeling beautiful. But probably more importantly, I was fortunate enough to have a daughter 20-something years ago. She told me women never tell their age, so 20-something years ago. And she was born with a form of cerebral palsy called hemiparesis, where she's weak on one half. So it looks as if she's like an adult with a stroke, but because she was born this way, it has also stunted her growth. So her disability, like Shelley's, is very visible. You would see it right away. So we've been dealing with those issues for decades now. So when Shelley brought this project to my attention, of course, the only answer was going to be yes. We renamed the project the Bold Beauty Project, and we're very excited to be less than a month away from our Miami launch. We launched in Washington, D.C. Last October. So this project will bring another 25 women with another 25 photographers to Miami, and I do hope that everyone here will be at that event. So, back to how I met Robert. So Shelley was wandering around looking for space for the project. She came over here to FIU, and somebody showed her this space, and she said, well, this probably isn't going to be our space. And they said, yes, but there's somebody that might be interested in the project. His name is Robert Zuckerman. Would you like to meet him? So Shelley and Robert changed a bunch of emails, and somehow I ended up meeting him. So Robert and I met for lunch with a woman named Star Sariego, who's the curator of the project. And we started a little inauspicious, right? Our restaurant was closed. We had to go someplace else. We were all a little off balance. We didn't know what we were doing. And we met Robert. And that's the beginning of a really, really positive story. And it's related to the Betterment Symposium, because if we could all be like Robert, we wouldn't need a Betterment Symposium. We would be there. So what did Robert do? He just opened his heart right? You opened your heart to me, to Star, and to the project, and basically said, what can I do?
Joy, Marissa.
You didn't know her then?
Yeah.
You didn't know her. Okay, he's jumping ahead in the story. So that day, he opened up to whatever we presented him, is my point. We presented him myself, Star, and this project. And Robert immediately said, okay, what can I do to help? And that's the way to make the world better, to be open, to not be fearful, to not be scared, to not feel like, gee, I don't have enough to give you something. He immediately says, I can help. And to be that way is the best way to be, because it makes you feel good and it makes your recipient feel good. So we said, well, what can you do? Here's this esteemed photographer, we've never met him. I said, well, how would you feel about photographing my daughter? Right? It's sort of a lot to ask, right? I don't know what he normally gets for a shoot, but we have no money and we're all volunteers. So that's when you got to meet Joy. So he said yes. So he came over to my house. Ironically, I had been selling my house. So we were really winding down my house, which was emotional and difficult. So he not only commemorated her, you'll see the image, but also the leaving of my house and the transition of my life. So he came in that day and he brought a volunteer with him, not a normal volunteer, but he brought a volunteer that he had found when he was volunteering at the Children's Hospital. And this charming young man, I think he was all of 7 years old, had been in Miami Children's Hospital getting treatment for his cancer, and he had expressed a desire to Robert to want to be a photographer. So Robert, who was volunteering to help these children that day, said, oh, you want to be a photographer? No problem, you be my assistant. So Robert shows up with this adorable assistant and his mom, and we had a makeup artist, we had another woman that Robert bought, a beautiful woman named Zoraida, who's hearing impaired, and they all came over to the house. And the day turned into a love fest. And we had just the most spectacular day. My daughter, whose name is Joy, wanted to have something incorporating roses. So she had all these red roses, and the volunteer had to pull them all off, and we created rose petals. And then we spent just not that long with Robert photographing Joy. And then Robert, because he's a giver, always giving, whatever he's given, he goes in his pocket, he says, I gotta find more. So he says, Joy, would you like to be the photographer for Zoraida instead of me being the photographer? So my daughter, who's an art student, was like, yes, yes. So then she went from being the model to the photographer. So this was one of the most extraordinary days I think any of us have had. It was a day of transformation, which brings us back to the project. So we want other women around the country, around the world, to have days like that. I'm not sure they're all going to be as good as our day, but we want them to have that experience. So for my daughter, who's always been looked at like, what's wrong with her, you know, starting when she was very little because she had to wear a brace on her leg, and then into adulthood when her disability is visible, she got to have a day when she looks so beautiful. It's outrageous. So I'm going to just show you one of the images that we have now been using for our branding, and that isn't on all of our invitations. I absolutely will. I pass these wherever I go. So our models are given this opportunity to see themselves in a very different way. And as a psychiatrist, I know about mirror neurons. I think I'm going to take a pause because I want you all to leave here with something, because I do also like to give like Robert, so I want to give you this one little tip because this will help you in lots of ways. So this is her. Who in this room has heard of mirror neurons? Cool. So mirror neurons are a part of our brain that mirror what we see. This is so important to know because it explains everything. It explains why we have to connect with each other. It explains why we see some people as different and others as the same. And it's all about our concept. If we can expand what we see as the same, then we can mirror anybody. If we're not aware of that and we just see differences, then we see something different, and we don't want to mirror. So our mirror neurons fire when we see somebody doing something. Scientists discovered this when they had monkeys wired up to see what part of their brain was moving, and scientists get tired, as they have every right to do. They go out, they have a break, they come back, they're eating ice cream, and lo and behold, the tongue muscles of the monkey's brain are firing. As the monkey is watching the scientist lick an ice cream cone, the tongue part of the monkey's brain is firing. Okay, so this is not a unique human phenomena, these mirror neurons, okay? So what that means is when you see anybody do anything, that part of your brain is triggered. Now this probably makes sense intuitively to you, right? When you smile, you did it, you can't help it. If I smile at you, you can't help but smile back. If I come to you and I'm upset and my forehead's all crunched up, you're not gonna feel good, right? If I'm throwing up, you're gonna be like, whoa, get away from that, right? So this is how we interconnect as humans. It's through our mirror neurons, okay? And then this topic gets really complicated. Like autistic people might not have as many mirror neurons, right? Surgeons who can't mirror what they feel because they got to be empathic and cool, they may actually have fewer mirror neurons or deteriorate them over time. People who are empathic, right? Tune in. Oh, we get so sensitive, it's exhausting. I go home at the end of the day, I can't talk to another person. I tell my kids, I cannot talk to you for an hour until I go in my own space and recover my head from being tied in with people who are distressed all day. So these are mirror neurons. This is what I want you to remember. Now back to the project. So what happens to these women is they have an opportunity to see themselves as beautiful, which is so empowering. But then the other parts that are important are the photographer. Now Robert's extraordinary. Many of these photographers have not worked with people with disabilities. So for them, they're used to these high fashion models where they go, do this, do that, do this, do this, and the girls are all over it. We have models in this show that are paralyzed, that can't move, that are blind, that are deaf. So for the photographer, it's a whole new experience. Mind you, all the photographers are volunteers. We did a shoot this Labor Day that involved 10 people, underwater shoot. They spent literally weeks preparing, shooting, after, all volunteer. That's an extraordinary experience to give that much of yourself. Not everybody's given that much. And the last part of the project, which I always say is the most important, is you, right? Because I want you guys to come and bring your mirror neurons, and I want you to look at these women and go, wow, they are beautiful. And then you are going to get to read about their personal story and their lives, and by doing that, you're going to be transformed. Because to live with a disability, it impacts every moment of your life. And I'm just taking a quick look here, and I'm seeing a group that's not living with a disability. And so to come to a show and read about these women with their disabilities and to see how far they've come is transformative for the audience. So as you can see, I feel very passionate about this project. We are entirely indebted to Robert for his generosity, his kindness, but also, frankly, his brilliance. It's a very good combination. Let me just tell you a side note about my daughter. Since Robert has come into her life, and since other events have occurred, she wrote on Facebook the other day that she feels like she's happy for the first time in her life, that everything has come together. She's confident, she's proud, she's doing well in school, and she has a boyfriend. So it's been an extremely beautiful journey, and I hope that you'll all be with us on November 12th. If there's other people who are interested in participating in a bigger way, please do. We have a meeting at 11 o'clock today. I'm sure I'm over my 10 minutes. I did not talk about the other project, but I'm sure you want me to stop, right?
We're loving it. I'm loving it.
Okay, then let me say one thing about that. My other project is called Be Kinder. And right now we're BEKINDR, and that project is about stories of kind strangers, okay? Book is coming out, Stories of Kind Strangers. Why is it important to read stories about kind strangers? I didn't know when I started the book that there's actually a word for it that a social psychologist has coined. It's called elevation. And elevation is the opposite, in his belief, of disgust. Disgust, elevation. And that's why Robert is feeling good today, because we are here, World Betterment Symposium, to elevate. And his belief is that elevation, right? Hearing empowering things, hearing about kindness, seeing people being good to each other, elevates all of us, makes us feel tingly, warm, and inspires us to want to be better. So there's actually a term for it. It's elevation. As a psychiatrist, I'm more interested in what's causing that, and what's causing that is probably oxytocin. Do you know what oxytocin is? Huh? A hormone, right. Let me make it easy for you. The love hormone, the cuddle hormone, or nature's marijuana. If you forget everything I say today, remember your mirror neurons, because they're going to impact all your relationships. If you're in a bad mood and you come home and you think, gee, my partner was mean to me. No, you walked in a bad mood and they caught it. What do you expect, right? You come home happy, gee, everything goes great. So remember mirror neurons, and remember the concept of elevation. We're all here today to elevate, to think more, to know more, to be inspired, to give more. The more we do this, the more we can do this, because we secrete oxytocin, which is what bonds us, makes us trust, makes us feel secure, and makes us want to take care of other people. It's what happens when you give birth. It's what happens when you nurse. It's what happens when you have orgasm, when you touch and hug. That's oxytocin. So hopefully we all got a good boost of oxytocin today, and we will on November 12th. Robert.
The mirror neurons, does that explain contagious yawning?
Absolutely. Anything. You know what it also really explains? I hope no one was doing that in here today. It also explains why people watch sports. You're getting better. So the next time one of your partners nags, you could turn the TV off, go, can't, I'm practicing. You're watching it. You are watching what those professional athletes are doing. That's showing your brain what you should do, right? So it explains so much of human behavior.
So it's your connecting mechanism.
Yeah.
How do you connect with others?
Yeah. But
some people connect well and some people...
That's right. It's their mirror neurons, right? And if you think about it, when we have to take care of our young, then when they're their most dependent and we need to be our best, they're not talking to us. So we have to have a different way to understand what they need. So we have to have those mirror neurons. And that's why during, when you give birth, your brain is very plastic and it can change a lot. So you can enhance your mirror neurons. You can enhance your abilities to care for somebody else. So becoming a parent or falling in love with another person, falling in love with a passion, a project, a colleague, that changes your brain and allows your brain to be bathed in chemicals that allow you to alter your brain. And one way to alter it is to build up your mirror neurons, be more empathic, be more in tune. Yep.
Beauty is a product.
Beauty is what?
A product.
A project?
Product.
Product. Beauty is a product.
And it's a product because it sells. It sells lipstick, it sells photo shoot, it sells a lot of things, right? So I'm just have one question. I'm nobody, you know, and what do you think there is so much added value in beauty? Because instead of trying to leverage them to the world, I think what would make us feel happy is not the beauty. Beauty is temporary. We are going to get old. No matter how much money we will spend in lipstick, in makeup, in plastic, it's a fact. What should make us happy is our ethics, how good we are. So why, instead of trying to leverage them to a world that is completely misunderstanding, not to try to fight like the other against the models, against the beauty, it is like it is how can I say, it's not solid. What is solid is really who we are, you know?
I agree with everything you said, and I also disagree, because we are here as a human species to really do one thing, which is to procreate and pass our genes to the next generation. If we all decide not to do that, then whatever else we do is irrelevant. We could make the world the kindest, best place, but if it's done in a generation, it was all for nothing. So my understanding, my background is in evolutionary psychology, which is understanding the genetic basis, the evolutionary basis of behavior. So to me, beauty equals fertility. And that's why what you said was right and wrong. Beauty is something that equals fertility. And if we're really here to procreate, then we're never going to get away from wanting to be and look fertile, because that's what we're here to do. Not every one of us, not at every moment, of course, but as a human species, it's always going to be a highest value. And babies come into this world knowing what is beautiful. And what's beautiful is not red lipstick per se, but what's beautiful is health. And the healthier we are, the more beautiful we are. And part of health is mental health and self-esteem. So there is no question that for someone like my daughter, who's not been able to feel beautiful in the conventional sense, right? Because the conventional sense of beauty is quite narrow and well-defined in here. You came pre-programmed knowing what beautiful is. You look at Miss World, there's no argument. Everybody knows all those women are beautiful. But here's where I think the power comes from, and here's where I think the project is important. What I talk about in my book, and most people didn't get this, I hope you guys will get this, is innate beauty receptors. You're born with them, everybody's born with them. We all know what they look like. Boom, you triggered my innate beauty receptors the minute you got up. Woo, power, okay? Not gonna go away. But what we can do, and what we all need to do, is download new beauty receptors that have nothing to do with red lipstick, that have everything to do what you're talking about. That we want women that are beautiful because they're powerful, because they have integrity, because they're bright, because they're educated, because they're passionate, because they want to change the world. We need to not get away from beauty or be scared it's not going anywhere. We have to download new beauty receptors. So I call those evolving beauty receptors. And I hope that when you come to the show, my daughter here is appealing to classic beauty receptors. There's no question, you nailed it. There's 25 images. They're not all doing that. So our hope is that when you come to the show, you will see different versions of beauty, download in your own head new and broader concepts of beauty, and walk out of there transformed. So I challenge you to come and see if that happens. Does that make sense to everybody?
It's an exposure.
It's exposure. And right now we're living in a time of extraordinary exposure. We are seeing things we never saw before. And consequently, more things are beautiful. And the more things that are beautiful means they're normal, they're natural, they're comfortable. We can embrace them, we can open their heart. If Robert looked at me suspicious, he wouldn't say, hey, how can I help you? But he looked at us as one of the same, right? Here's some women, I like them, how can I help them? So it's really all about what you said, which is making sure that we are all viewed as what we are genetically, which is one big happy family. That's why we all agree on Miss World. We're all the same genes. Once you start to splinter and split in this group and that group, that's where you get into trouble. But you did call me out on very typical beauty receptors. True.
I was just trying to pick up on you and Star.
There you go.
No, but actually, so what you're saying, I think another way of saying it is redefining or
expanding
what our definition of beauty is.
Expanding. Right, you can't redefine,
Yeah.
It's innate. You need to evolve, download new beauty receptors. One of the things I said in my book, and you guys can all do this on Lincoln Road, it's the best place for it. Go out there, give yourself however many time you want. Every single person who passes by, identify what's beautiful. Everyone. Find what's beautiful in them. You're downloading new beauty receptors, right? This is no challenge to see her as beautiful. You get no extra credit point for that. Go to Lincoln Road and see what's beautiful in each person, because there's something beautiful in each person. And that's what you were speaking to. We have to expand what we see as beautiful. Now, attraction is very different than beauty, right? And that is a wide, much wider range. But we do have innate beauty receptors. We can't get away from them. We can't be angry. Yes, it's tough getting old because of that. Yes, that's why we spend so much money. But that's reality. And we are less valuable because we can't procreate and keep the human race going. But we can try to be good grandparents.
There's a great passage, the opening, there's a book called The Lover by Marguerite Duras, and it was made into a movie. And the opening passage is a passage where a man is talking about a woman that he's known since she was very young, and he's watched her through the years become old, and her face has become you know, filled with lines, and he goes, I liked you then, but I prefer you now, where your face is ravaged. And so it's open. That's what I'm saying. Definition of it. A couple of years ago, I spoke. I was invited to speak at the Westin Diplomat Spa. They had a speaking series, and it was me, and there was I forget her name, but she was a renowned dermatologist from Boca, and she spoke first, and she talked for an hour about all the products you apply on your face to be beautiful. And I got up and I said, well, I've been photographing people for 40 years, and for me, beauty is when someone accepts who they are. And I could see her in the audience like nodding her head, but that for me is kind of a shortcut way of what you're talking about the receptors.
Yeah. My daughter is at her peak fertility years, and my daughter's #1 goal is to find a man, get married, and procreate.
Yeah.
So that's why sort of it's the innate stuff. But we have models of all ages. And so, of course, models of other ages are going to express different things because they're past that phase of life. But she's not, you know, she's got rose petals throwing in the air, and she's a peach. But your point is really valid, particularly if you go by this. There are no other images that look like this. This is my daughter. This is Robert's work. The rest are really different, and some are very challenging. In fact, we were supposed to show some today. Are we showing them? Some of them are quite challenging, and they're going to challenge you to download new receptors. We are a nonprofit. And our idea is to create a replication model where cities around the country, around the world, can create their own show, because to create societal change, to make the world a better place, requires sustained effort. You can't do something once. So that is our concept, is to repeat this around the world. And to your point, it will be fascinating to be able to compare once we have shows globally and see what different shows look like, particularly around the world. I hope that we're that fortunate to be able to see what images people create in different parts of the world. So that will be very interesting to see. But just in summarizing, because I am a psychiatrist, and I like to feel like I've left this place a little bit better. You're going to remember mirror neurons. You're going to remember oxytocin. And if you're ever feeling down and you want to secrete oxytocin, go on Instagram and look at puppies and look at kittens and look at anything cute, or ask somebody for a hug. You can even touch yourself, take a warm shower or a bath. Those all secrete oxytocin. They make us feel better. And then lastly, the concept of elevation. Do things that create awe, that inspire you. Be around people like Robert. Come to symposiums like this, and hopefully when you walk out today, you're going to say, oh, I have that feeling of elevation she was talking about. I feel like I want to make the world a better place. I am inspired. That's your oxytocin kicking in, and also your mirror neurons from being around other smart people all day. So this slide is Shelley. She's so cute. And she has a TED Talk, if somebody has 6 minutes, called The Beauty of Disability. It's spectacular. And she describes her journey from going of that place of insecurity and people staring at her in an awkward, uncomfortable way, or doctors poking and prodding, to getting on her stage 10 years ago and being absolutely gorgeous. She had a fiance at the time. They've gone ahead and gotten married. She's resurrected this project. She has fully embraced herself and is so beautiful. She just radiates it. And of course, it's not a physical change. It's completely a mental change. So that's Shelley. The talk is called The Beauty of Disability. It's only 6 minutes. I can't get through it without crying. I'm a crier when I see that one. So hopefully it will inspire you. You'll get that feeling of elevation that we're looking for. And then we can just quickly show. So just 1 second. This is Marilee. This is from our DC show. This is a woman who was born with no arms and no legs. This is her husband. Beautiful man, and they wanted to do a photo together. Most women elect not to do that. You can see her wedding ring is in her cleavage right there. She doesn't have anywhere else to put it. And she did a lot of the graphic design for the Bold Beauty Project in Washington, D.C. Now, these are from the original show. That is the image that Robert took that was in our last show, and you can get the symbolism, right, with the roses falling down. Some of them have landed. Just a beautiful work of art. This is a lovely, lovely woman. This is her seeing eye dog. She's visually impaired. And I just love that photo because of the mirror neurons that get stimulated. You can see and feel the love in that photograph. I will tell you, sadly, that dog has passed away. So we felt really happy at the project, so that we were able to send her this beautiful image. These are all blown up, massive sizes, so we sent her that image. So, you know, life is happy, life is sad. This is a woman also visually impaired from the original show. Good. So I think I answered your question, huh? Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
Honor to be here. Thank you.